The central spire of Lumina's living city was dying. Thalia Voss pressed her palm against the once vibrant membrane, feeling only weak pulses where there should have been a symphony of life. The organic structure, which she had grown from a simple seed almost 30 years ago, was collapsing despite her best efforts. "Hold on," she whispered, her silver eyes reflecting the dim bioluminescence of the dying structure. "Just a little longer." Thalia was what humans might call slender, with skin that shifted subtly between deep indigo and violet, depending on her emotions. Currently, her complexion was pale with worry. She appeared humanoid in form, 2 arms, 2 legs, 10 fingers, 10 toes, yet there was an otherworldly grace to her movements that betrayed her extraterrestrial origins. For centuries, Thalia had been revered across 17 star systems as the architect of breath. Her living cities pulsed with energy, grew with purpose, and resonated with emotion. Some species worshipped her as a goddess, building temples within her creations. Others sought her out for commission work, offering fortunes for even the smallest living structure. None knew her secret. Every creation was doomed to fail. "Architect Voss," a voice called from behind her, "the council is requesting your presence. They're concerned about the city's condition." Thalia didn't turn to face her assistant. "Tell them I'm working on a solution." It was a lie. After centuries of brilliance, she had no solutions left. Every living city she had ever created began to deteriorate after a few decades. Something was missing. A final connection, a stabilizing core that she couldn't identify despite her genius. Dr. Julian Everett wiped sweat from his brow as he carefully excavated what appeared to be a control node in the ruins of an ancient, living city. The planet Lumina was hot, its twin suns bearing down on him despite the shade of his expedition tent. "Find anything interesting?" called his research partner, Dr. Olivia Park, from across the dig site. "Nothing conclusive," Julian replied, brushing dirt from the fossilized organic matter. "But this node seems different from the others. The patterns here suggest a direct connection to the central nervous system of the structure." Julian was a respected archaeologist specializing in extinct alien architectures. At 42, his dark hair was graying at the temples, and laugh lines framed his eyes, evidence of a life spent in fascination rather than disappointment. His hands, though strong, moved with surgical precision as he worked. "You know," Olivia said, approaching his workstation, "there's an active city just 50 kilometers from here. The famous architect herself is there, trying to save it from collapse." Julian nodded without looking up. "Thalia Voss. I've read about her work. Brilliant but ultimately temporary. That's why these ruins are so important. To understand why they fail." He carefully inserted a specialized tool into the node's center and was surprised when it gave way without resistance. Suddenly, the fossilized material beneath his fingers pulsed with a faint green light. "That's not possible," Julian whispered, staring in disbelief. The light spread outward from the node in intricate patterns, illuminating dormant pathways. What had appeared dead for centuries was responding to his touch. "Julian," Olivia said, her voice tight with awe, "what did you do?" "I don't know," he replied, watching as small vine-like structures began to emerge from the previously calcified material. "But I think we need to contact Architect Voss immediately." Thalia arrived at the ancient ruins in a state of controlled panic. Reports of awakening structures in a city that had been dead for over 3 centuries could not be ignored, especially when her current creation was failing before her eyes. She found Julian kneeling beside the excavated node, which was now surrounded by slowly expanding organic material that pulsed with gentle light. "Step away from it," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of centuries. Julian looked up, momentarily stunned by the architect's presence. She was both exactly as described in historical accounts and completely different, powerful and vulnerable simultaneously. "Dr. Everett, I presume?" Thalia said, approaching cautiously. "Would you mind explaining how you've done the impossible?" Julian stood, brushing dirt from his knees. "I simply excavated the node and used standard archaeological tools to access the central connection point. It responded when I touched it." Thalia's expression remained neutral, but her skin darkened slightly to a deeper violet, a sign of intense emotion that Julian couldn't interpret. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward the node. Julian stepped aside. Thalia knelt and placed her palm against the awakened structure. Immediately the light dimmed and the growing vines retracted slightly. She pulled her hand away, her eyes wide, with disbelief. "It's responding to you, not me. That's—" She hesitated. "Unprecedented." When Julian touched the node again, the response was immediate. The structure blossomed with renewed vigor, emitting a soft, melodic hum that seemed to resonate with something deep within him. "There's something about your neurological signature," Thalia whispered, studying him with newfound intensity. "Your empathy, creativity, resilience, human qualities that somehow complete the connection my designs have always lacked." Their eyes met, and Julian felt an inexplicable pull toward this alien woman, as if the same force awakening the ancient structure was drawing them together. "Dr. Everett," Thalia said, her voice barely audible above the structure's growing symphony, "I believe we have much to discuss about the future of my work, and perhaps the future of architectural symbiosis between our species. The dying city in the distance and the awakening ruins beneath their feet were merely prelude to what would become the most profound collaboration in galactic history. A partnership forged in necessity, sustained by wonder, and ultimately transformed by love." The laboratory Thalia had established within her fading city pulsed with new energy as Julian placed his hands on the central neural node. The living walls responded immediately, their dull grey surfaces blooming with vibrant blues and purples that radiated outward in concentric patterns. "Remarkable," Thalia murmured, her silver eyes reflecting the renewed bioluminescence. "The structural integrity has increased by 37% in just 3 days." Julian removed his hands, watching as the glow diminished, but didn't fade entirely as it had during their first experiments. "It's retaining more each time, learning, adapting to my neurological pattern." "Like a symbiotic memory," Thalia agreed, making notes on her translucent tablet. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, but Julian noticed a slight tremor, evidence of the hope she was trying to contain. After 3 centuries of watching her creations wither and die, Thalia was afraid to believe this solution might be impermanent. "You've never encountered this compatibility with any other species?" Julian asked, accepting the cup of steaming herbal tea she offered. Their fingers brushed momentarily, and he felt an unexpected warmth that had nothing to do with the beverage. Thalia's skin shifted to a deeper violet along her cheekbones. "Never. I've worked with thousands of species across the galaxy. Some showed minimal temporary effects, but nothing like this." She hesitated. "Nothing like you." The laboratory door slid open, interrupting the charged moment. Olivia entered with an excited expression. "You need to see this," she announced. "The city's residents are gathering in the central plaza. The renewal is visible in the public areas now." They hurried to a viewing platform overlooking the vast, circular plaza. Hundreds of Lumina's diverse inhabitants, some humanoid, others with forms that defied easy categorization, had gathered below. Their upturned faces registered wonder as the walls of surrounding structures pulsed with renewed life. Small flowering, vines emerging from previously barren surfaces. "They're calling it a miracle," Olivia explained. Julian glanced at Thalia. "Is this celebration premature?" "Perhaps," she admitted, "but they've been living in a dying city for years. Hope is precious." "Here." Later that evening, as twin moons cast silver light across the city's regenerating spires, Julian found Thalia on a private balcony overlooking the landscape. She stood motionless, her silhouette ethereal against the night sky. "May I join you?" he asked softly. She nodded without turning. "I've been contemplating failure, Dr. Everett." "Julian," he corrected gently, "and failure seems an odd focus given today's progress." "Progress built on chance," she replied, finally facing him. "For centuries I've believed my work was flawed, that I was flawed. Now I discover the missing piece was simply the touch of a species I'd never encountered." Julian stepped closer. "Not just any human. Only my touch creates this effect." "Yes," Thalia acknowledged, her voice softening, "which makes you uniquely valuable to many powerful interests across the galaxy." "You've been contacted already," Julian realized. "The Planetary Consortium has offered significant resources for exclusive access to our partnership." Her silver eyes studied his face. "And they won't be the last." The implications settled between them. Their discovery had transformed from scientific curiosity to potential political leverage overnight. "I didn't come to Lumina to become a component in galactic politics," Julian said with a wry smile. "I came to understand why beautiful things die." Thalia's expression softened, vulnerability visible in her features. "And I've spent lifetimes creating beautiful things, knowing they would die." Her hand reached for his, hesitant. "Until now." When their fingers intertwined, Julian felt the same resonance he experienced with the living structures, a connection that transcended their biological differences. Thalia's skin illuminated with subtle patterns where they touched, like constellations appearing in twilight. "This is new territory for me," she whispered, looking at their joined hands. "For both of us," Julian agreed, and when their eyes met again, the distance between alien and human seemed to diminish, replaced by something more fundamental, two souls recognizing their complementary nature across the vast divide of evolutionary history. As Julian drew her closer, the living walls around them began to sing. "Focus on the structural intention," Thalia instructed, her hands guiding Julian's as they shaped the small, seed-like object between their palms. "The city grows from purpose, not just biology." 6 weeks had passed since their discovery. The main city of Lumina now thrived with unprecedented vitality, but they had moved their work to a remote laboratory to avoid constant scrutiny from officials and pilgrims alike. Julian closed his eyes, concentrating on the sensation of the organic material responding to their combined touch. It pulsed with warm energy, absorbing his neurological patterns, while Thalia's ancient knowledge shaped its potential. "I can feel it," he murmured, "like it's drinking from me." "It is," Thalia confirmed, her voice close to his ear. "You're emotional. Architecture, compassion, imagination, adaptability. These are what my creations have always lacked. My species evolved for precision and longevity. Yours developed for connection and innovation." The seed between their hands glowed brilliant azure, then stabilized into a compact sphere with intricate surface patterns. "It's ready," Thalia announced with quiet pride. "Our first truly collaborative creation." That evening, they planted the seed in the valley below their laboratory. Under twin moons, they stood watching as it took root, already beginning to unfold according to their shared design. "How long until it forms a habitable structure?" Julian asked, his arm around Thalia's waist. "Days, not years," she replied, leaning into him. "With your input, the growth rate has increased exponentially." Their relationship had evolved alongside their work, tentative touches becoming intimate embraces, professional fascination deepening into personal devotion. Despite their biological differences, They had discovered profound compatibility that extended beyond their architectural collaboration. Julian turned Thalia to face him, tracing the luminescent patterns that appeared on her indigo skin whenever they touched. "I never expected to find you," he admitted. "An alien architect who sees the universe as I do, a living structure waiting to be shaped by intention. And I never expected salvation would come in human form," Thalia replied, her silver eyes reflecting starlight, "especially one so stubborn about proper excavation protocols." Julian laughed, then grew serious. "The hegemony representatives arrive tomorrow. Are you certain we should demonstrate our progress?" The Galactic Hegemony, a powerful coalition of 17 advanced species, had requested an official assessment of their work. Their interest was concerning, given the organization's history of appropriating valuable technologies. "We can't hide forever," Thalia said. "Better to control the narrative than have them discover our work through other channels." Their kiss deepened with unspoken urgency. The knowledge that their private collaboration would soon face external pressures, adding intensity to their embrace. When they finally separated, the newly planted seed had already grown into a small pavilion, its walls pulsing in rhythm with their heartbeats. Later that night, in the organic dwelling they shared, their bodies moved together with the same synchronicity that produced their architectural wonders. Julian's hands traced the contours of Thalia's form as patterns of light blossomed across her skin, responding to his touch like her living structures. Their physical differences, her slightly higher body temperature, the subtle luminescence of her pleasure, only enhanced the profound intimacy they had discovered. "The structures respond to our connection," Thalia whispered afterward, her head resting on his chest. "They grow stronger when we're together this way." "So do I," Julian replied, kissing her forehead where delicate bioluminescent patterns still lingered. The next morning brought unwelcome company. 3 hegemony representatives arrived in a sleek vessel that hovered ominously over their valley laboratory. Leading them was Administrator Kenzo Vale, whose reputation for ruthless acquisition preceded him. "Architect Voss," Vale greeted with practiced diplomacy. "Your renewed success has captured the hegemony's attention, particularly your unconventional collaboration methods." His cold eyes assessed Julian with calculating interest. "Dr. Everett's contribution is essential to the work," Thalia stated firmly. "We function as equal partners." "Of course," Vale replied smoothly. "The hegemony merely wishes to understand the potential applications. Living architecture that thrives rather than fails could revolutionize colonial expansion." "Our work isn't meant for military applications," Julian interjected. Vale's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Everything has military potential, Doctor. The question is whether you'll profit from that reality or become victims of it." The demonstration proceeded under tension. Julian and Thalia guided the hegemony representatives through their small but rapidly growing settlement, explaining the symbiotic principles behind their breakthroughs. "Remarkable," Vale commented, watching a doorway heal itself after being deliberately scratched. "And you believe this compatibility is unique to Dr. Everett? It appears to be a rare neurological signature," Thalia answered carefully. "We're still researching whether other humans might share similar capabilities." The lie was necessary. They had already confirmed through discrete testing that Julian's ability was unique. Something about his specific brain patterns created the perfect complement to Thalia's architectural biology. As the inspection concluded, an unexpected arrival disrupted the tense proceedings. A sleek ship descended beside the hegemony vessel, bearing insignia Julian didn't recognize. "Architect Phaedrus," Thalia whispered, her skin paling to lavender. "My former mentor." The being that emerged moved with fluid grace despite advanced age. Like Thalia, Phaedrus appeared humanoid but with distinctly alien features, skin that shifted between deep green and gold, eyes with horizontal pupils that assessed everything with predatory precision. "My brilliant student," Phaedrus called, approaching with arms outstretched. "I came as soon as I heard the rumors. You've solved the decay problem at last." "Through human partnership," Thalia confirmed, her posture stiffening. "So I see," Phaedrus replied, examining Julian with undisguised curiosity. "How resourceful of you." The subtle emphasis made Julian instantly wary. There was history here, complicated and unresolved. Administrator Vale, Phaedrus acknowledged the hegemony representative. "I trust you've recognized the strategic value of my former student's discovery." "The hegemony is preparing a generous offer," Vale confirmed. "As am I," Phaedrus countered. "After all, Thalia's work builds upon my foundational research. I have certain proprietary claims." That evening, after their unwelcome visitors had retreated to their respective vessels with promises to return the following day, Thalia revealed her complicated past with Phaedrus. "He taught me everything about living architecture," she explained, her voice tight with old pain. "Then claimed my early innovations as his own. When I created independently successful structures, he denounced me publicly. And now he wants credit for our breakthrough," Julian concluded. "He wants control," Thalia corrected, "over the work, over me, over you." Julian took her hands, feeling the now familiar resonance between them. "They'll try to separate us." "Yes," she agreed solemnly. "The hegemony will offer you wealth beyond imagination. Phaedrus will threaten and manipulate. Neither can accept. That our work functions through partnership, not ownership. Then we give them neither option," Julian said, with sudden determination. "We protect what we've built, together." Thalia's eyes widened with understanding. "You mean we complete your life's work," he confirmed. "Not for them, but for ourselves, for what we've become together." As if responding to their resolution, the living structures around them began to pulse with intensified light, their song rising in harmonious affirmation. The attack came at dawn. Julian woke to alarms, not mechanical but biological. The living walls of their dwelling emitted high-pitched tones of distress that penetrated his consciousness like physical pain. "Thalia," he called, finding her side. Of the bed, empty, he rushed outside to witness chaos. Hegemony vessels hovered over the central portions of their newly constructed city, deploying synchronized energy pulses that disrupted the biological cohesion of the living structures. Buildings that had been vibrant and harmonious just hours before now convulsed in agony, their surfaces blistering under the assault. Thalia stood on an elevated platform, her hands pressed against the central neural node of the settlement, desperately trying to stabilize the disintegrating architecture. "Julian," she called when she saw him. "They're using resonance disruptors, severing the synaptic connections." Before he could reach her, a blinding flash erupted between them. Julian was thrown backward by the blast, his consciousness flickering as his head struck something solid. Through blurred vision, he saw hegemony forces surrounding Thalia, restraining her struggling form. "The human is the key," Administrator Vale's voice cut through the chaos. "Secure him as well." Julian fought to remain conscious, dragging himself toward an undamaged section of living wall. With desperate instinct, he pressed his palm against the pulsing surface. "Help," he whispered, focusing his thoughts as Thalia had taught him. To his astonishment, the wall rippled in response. A seam appeared, widening just enough for his body to slip through before resealing seamlessly. Inside the organic pocket, healing enzymes bathed his injuries, while the structure concealed his presence. Through the translucent membrane, he watched helplessly as Thalia was taken aboard the hegemony vessel. His last glimpse was of her silver, eyes scanning desperately for him before the ship's doors sealed. Hours later, when Julian emerged from his living sanctuary, the settlement was unrecognizable. Half the structures had collapsed entirely. Others pulsed weakly with fading life, But something unexpected had occurred during his concealment. The living walls had communicated with him, transferring information directly into his mind. "They're taking her to the Meridian outpost," he murmured, the knowledge appearing in his consciousness with startling clarity. "And Phaedrus betrayed us both." Over the next 3 days, Julian discovered abilities he hadn't known he possessed. Without Thalia's guidance, he found he could still communicate with the damaged structures, his touch not only stabilizing, but now directing their growth. It was as if his time with Thalia had transformed him, integrating her architectural knowledge with his human intuition. Working tirelessly, he coaxed the remaining structures to consolidate, forming a small but powerful living vessel capable of interstellar travel. The ship grew according to his specifications, developing propulsion systems derived from the same biological principles that allowed Thalia's cities to process energy. As he prepared for departure, Olivia arrived with alarming news. "The hegemony is claiming Thalia attempted to weaponize the living architecture," she reported. "They're holding her pending investigation, but it's just a pretense. They're trying to force her to replicate your work without you." "She can't," Julian said with certainty. "That's why they'll come for me next." "What about Phaedrus?" Julian's expression darkened. "He's with them now. He provided the resonance disruptors, technology specifically designed to destroy Thalia's work." Before leaving, Julian connected one final time with the damaged settlement, placing both hands on the central node that still pulsed weakly beneath the surface. "Remember," he whispered, focusing his intention into the living network. "Grow. He'll wait for our return." The journey to Meridian took 14 hours in his hastily grown vessel. The living ship, which he had named Symbiosis, responded to his neural commands with increasing sensitivity, as if their connections strengthened with each passing moment. Meridian Outpost hung like a mechanical parasite in orbit around a barren moon, all sharp angles and industrial efficiency, the antithesis of Thalia's organic architecture. Julian knew he couldn't approach directly. Instead, he guided Symbiosis to a maintenance dock where the living vessel extended pseudopods that attached to the station's hull, blending with the external sensors to avoid detection. Within the outpost, Thalia faced her former mentor across an interrogation table. "Your human cannot save you," Phaedrus stated coldly. "The hegemony has deployed forces to retrieve him." "You've always underestimated connection," Thalia replied, her voice steady despite her weakened condition. "It's why your structures never achieved true consciousness." Phaedrus leaned forward, his skin shifting to threatening crimson. "Consciousness was never the goal. Control was." His horizontal pupils narrowed. "I taught you everything, Thalia, everything except the final truth. Architecture exists to serve power, not life." "You're wrong," she countered, "and Julian will prove it." As if summoned by her faith, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The lights flickered, then failed completely before emergency systems engaged. "What is happening?" Phaedrus demanded of the facility guards. The answer came not from them, but from the walls themselves. The metal surfaces of the interrogation room began to ripple as if suddenly fluid, organic tendrils emerging from seemingly solid steel. Julian had not simply docked with the station. He had introduced living architectural elements through the maintenance systems. Now those elements were growing, spreading, transforming the rigid structure from within. When the door melted away, Julian stood in the opening, his hand pressed against a pulsing organic nodule that had once been a security panel. "You've evolved," Thalia whispered, seeing the change in him immediately. The subtle luminescence beneath his skin, the way the living material responded to his mere proximity. "We both have," he replied, moving to her side while the organic matter continued to spread throughout the room, restraining Phaedrus and the guards in living bonds. Their reunion embrace sent visible waves of energy through the spreading architectural network, accelerating its growth and strengthening its integrity. "The station is transforming," Julian explained, as he led her through corridors now lined with pulsing organic material. "Becoming something new, neither fully yours nor mine, but ours. A hybrid architecture," Thalia realized with wonder, "something that has never existed before." When they reached the docking bay where Symbiosis waited, Administrator Vale stood blocking their path, surrounded by Hegemony security forces. "This station is Hegemony property," he stated flatly, "as are the architectural processes you've initiated." Julian stepped forward. "You fundamentally misunderstand what's happening here. This isn't technology to be owned. It's evolution expressing itself." "Evolution can be contained," Vale countered, signaling his forces to raise their weapons. But before they could fire, the living architecture that had spread throughout the station responded to the threat. The floor beneath the Hegemony forces softened, immobilizing them as walls curved protectively around Julian and Thalia. "We don't wish to harm anyone," Thalia called to the trapped administrator, "but we will not be separated again." As they boarded Symbiosis, Julian placed his hand on Thalia's cheek, his touch creating cascades of light beneath her indigo skin. "I felt you," he said softly. "Even when we were apart, the structures carried your essence." "And mine yours," she replied. "I think we've transcended our original forms, Julian. Whatever comes next, we face it together," he finished. A Symbiosis detached from the partially transformed station and carried them into the darkness of space, their destination clear. To them both, the ruins where they had first discovered their connection, now ready to become the foundation of something unprecedented in galactic history. 1 year after their escape from Meridian, Julian stood at the center of what had once been ancient ruins. Now, it was the heart of something magnificent, a living metropolis that extended for kilometers in every direction, its organic spires reaching toward Lumina's twin suns, while deep root systems connected the entire structure in neural harmony. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Thalia's voice came from behind him. "Our eternal city." Julian turned to embrace her, watching with familiar delight as luminescent patterns bloomed across her skin at his touch. Their physical connection had grown only more profound with time, their biological differences becoming complementary rather than divisive. "The Hegemony ships have entered the system," he informed her. "Their final ultimatum expires today." Thalia nodded, unsurprised. "And the coalition representatives?" "Arriving within the hour. 17 worlds standing with us against the Hegemony's claims." In the months following their escape, they had built not just a city, but a movement. Species from across the galaxy, who had witnessed the withering of Thalia's earlier creations, now flocked to experience the sustainable wonder of their collaborative architecture. More importantly, other humans with neurological patterns similar to Julian's, not identical, but compatible, had been discovered, opening possibilities for expanded collaborative creation. "Are you ready?" Thalia asked, her silver eyes searching his. Julian took a deep breath. "To potentially start a galactic conflict?" "Not particularly, but to defend what we've built?" "Absolutely." Their plan was audacious. Rather than fighting the Hegemony directly, they would demonstrate the true potential of their living architecture, not as passive dwellings, but as a self-sustaining, self-defending network spanning multiple worlds. At the appointed time, they proceeded to the resonance chamber, a vast cathedral-like space at the center of their city where the neural connections of all their creations converged. Representatives from the coalition worlds gathered around the perimeter, while Julian and Thalia positioned themselves on the central platform. "The Hegemony fleet has entered orbit," announced Kai Amara, their chief security advisor. 5 capital ships, multiple support vessels. "They're hailing us," added Olivia, who had remained loyal throughout the tumultuous year. "Standard surrender protocols." Julian looked to Thalia, who nodded her readiness. Together, they placed their hands on the central neural node, a crystalline structure that pulsed with multicolored light. "Begin the convergence," Thalia instructed. Throughout the chamber, coalition representatives stepped forward. 13. Humans with compatible neurological patterns paired with architects from Thalia's species. Each pair joined hands and connected to subsidiary nodes linked to the central crystal. "Channel your intention," Julian called out. "Not defense, not aggression, connection." As the pairs established contact, the entire chamber began to resonate. With harmonious tones, the central crystal amplified, its light intensifying until it projected upward in a brilliant column that pierced through the ceiling and continued into the sky. In orbit, the hegemony fleet faltered as their sensors registered an unprecedented energy signature emanating from the planet's surface. On 17 worlds across 3 star systems, the living cities that Julian and Thalia had established over the past year simultaneously activated, each projecting similar beams of coherent energy upward. These beams converged in interstellar space, forming a network of light that bypassed traditional spatial limitations. "The architectural concordance is online," Olivia reported, reading from her instruments. "All 17 nodes are synchronized." Julian felt the connection through his entire being, not just the cities on Lumina, but every living structure they had created together, linked in conscious communion across vast distances. Through this network, they could share energy, information, and protection instantaneously. "The hegemony ships are powering weapons," Kai warned. "Let them," Thalia replied with serene confidence. "The network will respond proportionally." When the first hegemony vessel fired on the energy beam, the attack was absorbed and redistributed throughout the entire architectural network. The living cities didn't strike back. They simply reinforced themselves, becoming impervious to conventional weapons. After 3 futile attempts to breach the defense, the hegemony commander requested direct communication. Administrator Vale's face appeared on the chamber's projection surface, his expression a mixture of frustration and reluctant awe. "What have you created?" he demanded. "The future," Julian answered simply. "Living architecture that spans star systems, sustains itself indefinitely, and cannot be weaponized or controlled through force. The hegemony will not recognize your authority over this technology," Vale insisted. "It's not technology," Thalia corrected. "It's a new form of life, and it recognizes itself." As if to emphasize her point, the central crystal pulsed, and the projection changed. Instead of Vale's face, it displayed a visual representation of the architectural network, a living constellation of interconnected points of light spanning multiple star systems. "The network has achieved consciousness," Julian explained. "Not human consciousness, not alien. Something entirely new. It exists to nurture and protect all who dwell within it." "And what do you want?" Vale asked, his voice smaller now. "Recognition," Thalia stated. "The architectural concordance as an independent entity with full rights under galactic law." "And if we refuse?" Julian and Thalia exchanged glances before Julian responded. "Then we'll simply continue existing, Administrator. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your authority cannot control us. You can choose to be part of this new reality, or you can oppose it. The outcome remains the same." The negotiations that followed lasted weeks, but the result was never really in doubt. The hegemony, faced with a force it could neither defeat nor co-opt, eventually recognized the architectural concordance as a sovereign entity spanning multiple worlds. 3 months later, Julian and Thalia stood on the balcony of their private dwelling, overlooking the thriving metropolis that continued to grow more beautiful and complex each day. "Did you ever imagine this outcome?" Julian asked, his arms encircling her from behind. "When you were creating cities that inevitably failed?" Thalia leaned back against him, her skin illuminating with familiar patterns of contentment. "Never. I was trying to build something that would last beyond me. Instead, I found someone who completed me, and created something that will outlast us both," Julian added. The living city below hummed with harmonious activity. Species from across the galaxy now resided within its expanding boundaries, each contributing to its growth and evolution. More importantly, new human architect pairings were being established daily, each developing unique variations of living structures that added to the diversity of the network. "Phaedrus requested permission to visit," Thalia said suddenly. "He's apparently had a change of perspective since the concordance emerged." Julian tensed slightly. "Do you want to see him?" She turned in his embrace to face him. "I want him to see us, what we've accomplished together, how connection proved more powerful than control." Their kiss deepened as the sunlight began to fade, twin moons rising to cast silver light across the living city. Beneath them, the structure responded to their intimacy, surrounding their dwelling with newly blossomed flowers that released sweet fragrance into the evening air. Later, as they lay together in their chamber, the walls pulsing gently with the rhythm of their combined heartbeats, Julian traced the luminescent patterns across Thalia's skin. "I've been thinking about the future," he said softly. "We have centuries," she reminded him with a smile. The architectural bond they shared had extended his lifespan considerably, while the human influence had gifted her with renewed creativity and adaptability. "I want to explore beyond known space," he continued, "not as colonizers or conquerors, but as creators. There are worlds waiting for the touch of living architecture." Thalia's eyes brightened at the proposition. "A vessel-like symbiosis, but larger, capable of growing new concordance nodes on undiscovered worlds." "Exactly," Julian agreed. "Not expansion for power's sake, but connection for life's sake." The architectural network thrummed in approval around them, already beginning to form the designs they had only just imagined. This was their greatest discovery. That intention, shared between complementary minds, could manifest directly through the living material they had co-created. As dawn broke over the eternal city, the first organic filaments of their new interstellar vessel began to take shape on the outskirts of the metropolis. Unlike conventional construction, this growth incorporated their shared vision from the beginning, their love, their purpose, their dedication to bridging differences across the cosmic divide. "We are architects of more than cities now," Thalia whispered as they watched the vessel's initial framework reaching skyward. "We are architects of possibility." Julian's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as patterns of light danced between them. "And our greatest creation is what we became together." Above them, the interconnected beams of the architectural concordance pulsed in cosmic rhythm, a symphony of life that would continue to resonate across the stars long after. Its original composers had returned to the universe that inspired them. 3.7 Sonnet.